Hello and welcome to Barry's Economics. Today I'm going to be talking about the real and total blindness of the rich. So I want you to imagine something. Actually, I'm going to give you an animation shortly so you don't have to imagine it, but for now, bear with me. Imagine a man walking down the street with a hat on, and the hat is red on one side and blue on the other. And he's walking down the street, and people on one side of the street say, "Hey, look, there's a guy with a red hat on." And the people on the other side of the street say, "Hey, there's a guy with a blue hat on." They both think they've seen the truth. And they're both arguing with each other because from their point of view, it's absolutely fundamentally true that the guy had a red hat on or a blue hat on. And what are these other jokers, what are they talking about? It's not a blue hat. Are they blind? It's a red hat. It's clear, what absolute plonkers. How are these plonkers confusing the colour of this guy's hat? They're idiots. Absolute bloody idiots. Let's shoot them. All right, gone a bit far. Let's just say this guy's in England, not in America. But this is exactly what's happening when we talk about taxation. On one side of the street, there are the opponents of a wealth tax. This punishes success, they say. I worked hard, I built this, I took the risks. Why should the government take more? I did it. That's the red side of the hat. And that's not nonsense. It's a valid perspective because innovation, enterprise, and risk-taking are hugely important for prosperity and generating wealth. It's true. And then there are supporters of a wealth tax, the blue hatters, as we call them, who say, listen, the taxation money, it funds schools, it funds hospitals, it funds infrastructure. It's the things that let ordinary people survive and thrive. It's hugely important to tax people. And that's not nonsense either. Without public goods, without infrastructure, the situation where you could take risks can't even exist. In order to build a business, you need schools, hospitals, roads, doctors, nurses. You need all of those things in order to build a business. That is also true. So the full truth is the whole hat, not the red, not the blue. It's about individual freedom and collective responsibility. You don't get to see only the side that flatters you. Here's the problem though, is that the people on the red side have more power and success. They have got the goods to tax. The people on the blue side are the sharp end of inequality, and they rely on other people for their voice because they can't pay for a voice. They can't pay for lobbyists. Politics is meant to do that. Newspapers are meant to report on their issues. But if you're on the red side, you only see punishment of success. And if you've got success, you've got no incentive to make the effort to walk around the other side of the street and see the blue side. And psychology tells us that's not an accident. That's what is called system justification bias. It's the built-in human tendency to defend the system that you benefit from, even if it's unfair, because admitting that the system is broken is too frightening and also goes against your very vested unconscious benefit. So if you're rich and powerful, your brain literally makes it feel natural that the hat is all red. What are these idiots talking about? It's all red. And then if you add in the availability heuristic, billionaires and newspapers are shouting about punishing success everywhere. Tax punishes success. I'm sure you've heard it. It's all over the talk of the wealth tax. Don't punish success. You hear it every day, but the invisible benefits of taxes, the teacher who keeps you literate, the doctor who keeps you alive, they fade into the background. What's loud is red. What's hidden is blue. Red people also have the time to shout about it as well because they're not doing two jobs. They can make the podcasts. Blue people are doing two jobs and don't have the time to shout about it. That's the availability heuristic. The only available information is from people on the red side. The people on the blue side don't have a voice. Their voice is meant to come from three feedback systems: newspapers, news, politics, and public debate, social media, community. And those very institutions that should show us the whole hat, should show everyone, both on the red and blue side, the whole hat, are owned or dominated by the same people in the red territory. Most UK newspapers are owned by millionaires or billionaires. I unfortunately think it's billionaires at this stage. They come from the red side. They only see the red side, and that's their bias. It's not a conspiracy, even though it feels like one. It's just bias. It's just human bias and motivated reasoning. And it's not just ownership. Even journalists, because journalism is now a really hard area to get into, and it's not that well paid. So even journalists, the voice of journalists, often come from wealthy backgrounds or wealthy families, or certainly have been educated in private institutions. And that doesn't mean they're not trying to overcome their bias, but they've grown up swimming in the red side. And it's really hard for them not to see that. Let me quickly give you the parable of Rory Stewart, a very well-intentioned, centrist, rational politician that tries his best to see things from all perspectives. How was it for him when he talked to one of the UK's best, most respected economists that happened to come from a working class background? What was his response?
I think your class anger is not letting you see some of the realities of politics.
And, like Rory, the problem is also in politics. The last few governments have been absolutely dominated by people that went to private school. Like, honestly, the percentage of people in the UK population that go to private school is 6%. The percentage of people in the last few governments that went to private school is 50%. If you take governments from, an average of governments from the 1940s to the present day, it is over 50% of the people that went to private school. If you take, this is an absolutely incredible statistic, right? If you take the prime ministers of this country and you look at how many of those went to private school, it is over 75%. In fact, it's so entrenched, even if you look at one particular school, Eton, what percentage of UK prime ministers have been to Eton since the 1940s? It's actually 35% from one school. Imagine your school where you grew up. Imagine 35% of all the UK prime ministers had been to your school. You'd feel pretty important, wouldn't you? And Mrs. Jordan, who taught you, would have been an elite nursery school teacher, right? So, what does that mean? What does it mean, Barry? Because this isn't a very funny one. This is just quite bleak. Yes, but that means that half the people who have been making decisions over the last 70 years that affect the entire country, about schools, housing, healthcare, they're people that have never needed the public version of those things. That's not democracy, is it? That's bias described as normal, or as I like to call it, normalcy bias. So this is where the language of bias really helps, is that when people say we don't need a wealth tax, it punishes success. Remember, what they're really saying is we live on one side of the street and we insist that the hat is red. And when people who should be reminding us that the hat has a blue side, the journalists, the politicians, the people that manage the social space, social media, are also standing in the red zone, the whole country gets tricked into thinking there's no blue side at all. And when you can even see that bias on leading moderate political podcasts, I'll give you another one of those Rory clips, just for a little bit of a, saucisson.
So there are different narratives. They're all got the same narrative, which is,
no, but the thing,
I'm angry, I'm working class, and these guys
who become professors,
are rich and ignorant.
Unfortunately, we need to give voice to inequality because it's not being serviced by the politicians, it's not being serviced by the newspapers, and it's not being served by the algorithm, or what is essentially now public debate. So we've got to hijack the algorithm in some way, or talk about it in communities together to essentially deprogram the gaslighting and reinstate the inequality feedback loop. A wealth tax isn't a punishment. It's just what happens when you admit the hat is both red and blue at the same time. That's what it is. I kind of want a hat for this. Maybe I'll make a hat that's half red, half blue. I mean, I could be a walking metaphor. I fucking hate hats. You know, all the men in my family are bald, and you can see by the mess of my hair, I don't touch my hair. I've got a rule with my hair. I don't fuck with it, and it doesn't fuck with me. Although you're probably looking at my hair going, yeah, it really fucks with you, Barry. Anyway, all I'm saying is I'm not wearing a hat, even though it's a pretty spot-on metaphor. And besides, what kind of dickhead wears a hat that's half blue and half red? I mean, I blame the guy in the hat. I think he's the twat in the hat. I mean, that's not a kid's book, is it? Should be. Actually, you know what? I might write a book called The Twat in the Hat. Talking about books, I did have the idea of a, you know, Where's Wally? I did think of writing it, because I fucking hate that book. You're always looking for Wally. It's like, I mean, who's got so much time and so little stress in their life that they just want to look for Wally? Like, you pick it up and you're like, you think, oh, but this will be a bit fun. About 10 minutes later, you're like, what the fuck are you, Wally? Anyway, I was thinking of starting a book called There's Wally, which is just, oh, it'd be so relaxing, wouldn't it? Wait, what it is just, you get a big area of space, like in a desert, and there's just Wally sat in the middle of it. So you can open it. Oh, there's Wally. Oh, brilliant. Can I get on with my life now? Anyway, all I'm saying is the twat in the hat. You know what? I don't think I've ever seen somebody in a hat that doesn't look like a twat. All right. I've gone off-piste.